Welcome to The Briefcase and the Beat.
Welcome back to The Briefcase and the Beat with attorney Jason Marker, founder of Marker Law in Naperville, Illinois. For more than 25 years, Jason has fought for injured workers across Illinois while building a brand that blends music, real stories, and conversations around the legal issues that impact everyday people. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're talking about why the right records can make all the difference. My man, Jason, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for being here again, Evan. Happy to talk to you and excited about today's topic.
Yeah, this is a good one. We're going to talk a little bit about music right off the bat, though, Jason. I believe you like records. Do you like records?
For sure, it's a huge hobby of mine, Evan. And talking about, today, records, vinyl, I mean, this is just something I'm really passionate about. So I would say I've got a decent collection of records, probably maybe 150 at this point. I've just always been a huge record collector. In fact, it started when I was a kid, like growing up, believe it or not. I think by the age of 3, my mother got me one of those Fisher-Price record players that had the dots and spins around. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Like a gramophone from the 1800s. Anyway,
Yep.
and so from that point on, I mean, my mother would just buy me records, small ones. And I think maybe when I was 5 or 6, she had a small record player. I would buy 45s. And I recall that the first record that she ever bought me was Laura Branigan, Gloria. Do you know that song?
I do.
All right, man. I mean, that was like in the early 80s, right?
Yeah.
And then I can recall having the Tears for Fears Shout record and just, many other after that. And then growing up, I'd get a larger stereo. My father had one, and he really kind of got me into music. He had a larger stereo in the family room, with these huge Polk audio speakers. And he did all kinds of collecting growing up. So some of the artists that, he enjoyed, I was listening to all the time as a kid, like Chicago, Santana, Led Zeppelin, Hall & Oates, U2, just, all kinds of stuff like that. And all of that just really formed my love for music. And then later, obviously, as I grew, you had cassette tapes. That didn't really last very long if we think about the whole history of music, right? Because it went to CDs pretty quick. But in my college years, like if ever I had extra money as a college kid, I bought like 300-400 CDs, and those all became kind of, immaterial later because of the digital age, right? But had a ton of fun with that. Did you buy a bunch of CDs when you were a kid, Evan?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was lucky enough. I'm old enough to remember going to those stores, going to like a FYE, or going to like just a store to go physically get copies and stuff. I kind of miss those days. I know digital is super. I know it's convenient. All I gotta do is hit a plus button on my phone. I can get any album I want. But there was something about going to that store and putting the headphones on and sampling the album before you bought it, Jason, that I miss those days a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, that's what it was too, that physical connection. And funny that you bring up the record stores, man. I used to work at a couple of record stores when I was younger too. I literally I worked at Musicland and a couple other stores in the malls, right? Because those were just great places to go check out music, look at all the CDs, physically connect, touch them. I mean, that was just what you did back then. It was great. But I think that physical connection also for me is what got me back into vinyl then as I got older. And so now that's kind of what I love to do, is just listen to music. I love reading the albums and the art on the albums, even the lyrics, because they're usually on the inside of the record, and you don't get that just from digital music. So I think that physical connection and really getting into the art of it is something I still really enjoy now.
What do you think it is, about the records that people still love so much? Because there's still even the newer generation, they kind of like that vinyl feeling. What do you think what do you think about it they love so much, and even with everything being digital now?
Well, so for some people, I think it's about the sound itself, right? And especially loud. I think records played through a stereo system, loud just has a different tone. You can hear the instruments doing things, and that's really where the real joy is sometimes. But listening to an album, I think, is a lost art. And I think that's what a lot of people also just enjoy doing, right? Our digital world right now is just so quick with instant, one songs and move on to the next. And you can find everything. But it's difficult to really listen to a whole album with the way things are streamed nowadays and the instant consumer gratification. So I think a lot of people just enjoy listening to an entire album and actually seeing what the artist does over the whole piece of work. And that's something that I really enjoy. You can sit down in your living room, have a cup of coffee, a drink, whatever, whether it's by yourself to just relax or with your spouse or your kids. In fact, my kids have really gotten into this and they like it now too. So that's just really an amazing thing to be able to do, either by yourself for your own peace and quiet, or just as a family to kind of see what these artists are doing with their entire piece of work?
So with that being said, though, just what are you listening to now? Because I heard you talking about Tears for Fears, some of my favorites, Hall and Notes, man. Let's listen. I've heard a whole bunch of names that I still listen to every day. But what are you listening to most these days?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, music feeds me, Evan. So I'm one of those guys that just loves to hear new music, new bands and new artists. And I know a lot of people aren't like that. Some people just, they can't get into the whole new thing because they don't know the song, right? But that feeds me. And I always have people ask me this question, and maybe you can think of this as we're talking about it. If you weren't doing the job that you're doing right now, what would be your dream job? And if everybody ever asked that of me, I would say if I wasn't a lawyer, my dream job would be to be a music talent scout. I mean, I just would love that, right? I mean, love to find new music, find new bands, figure out how to get them out there and get everybody else listening to them and make them big. And that would just be so fun. I think I'd really enjoy that. But as far as new music, I search it out a lot, and it's honestly nice on the digital platforms now because there's so much music out there. But it kind of gets to be hard nowadays to figure out, all of the ins and outs and who everybody's coming out and the new next artist and all that. But I do enjoy playing around on the digital atmosphere like that. But as far as the old music that I like, going back, like if I go back to classic rock. I love some Led Zeppelin. I love some, Pink Floyd, Santana, like I said, with some roots with my dad. And then through the 80s, man, I love the 80s. Probably one of my all-time favorite music genres, just really. But I mean, anything from Tears for Fears, Van Halen, you know, Eddie, Billy Idol, Prince. I mean, all these, there's so many great artists, man, right? And of course, my all-time favorite band is U2. I've probably said that on this podcast before, but they're my jam, right? I'm a diehard, probably seen them like over 25 times. And
Oh my goodness.
yeah, and most recently saw them at the Sphere in Vegas like a couple of years ago, and that was
Oh, I seen pictures of that, Jason.
yeah,
Good Lord.
amazing place to watch a show. If you haven't been, I highly recommend. Don't miss out. It's something you won't forget. Um, but yeah, REM, and then going up to the grunge era, I was really big into that with the Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam and all of that kind of stuff. But even recently, I've got into some country music and some hip hop and country music. I like some Daft Punk. I like some Drake. I like some Sam Fender, which is kind of a new alternative artist, Noah Khan. I hear it. No, I was going to ask you, so what kind of bands and music you listen to, Evan?
Yeah, it's interesting because you said it like going into the newer genre. It's harder for me to get into the newer genre because I'm stuck in the olds, but because I, me, but Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and Duran and like that's who I like. I love listening to a lot. Pet Shop Boys every now and again, but then going to like what you said, the grunge era. I love the Soundgardens of the world, of course. Yeah, I like Zombie back in the day. I like Korn. I like System of a Down, which is my favorite metal band. But then as far as new, Jason, I like the young kid, Tommy Richmond. I'm liking that kid. Yeah, yeah, I'm liking what he does. You mentioned Tame Impala. There's a couple of the newer ladies, the pop ladies that I'm liking, little pop princesses. I like Tate McRae. She's coming on. Yeah, so I'm starting to branch out, Jason. I'm trying to get back into the newer era, brother.
Well, it sounds like you got a plethora of music that you love out there, man. That's great.
But yeah, so there's from one type of record to another type of record. It's kind of different in the legal world. So what records matter most after someone gets hurt or after someone gets an injury there, Jason?
Yeah, so like you said, shifting to these other kind of records. When we're talking records in the legal field, we're talking about the treatment of a patient. And when we look at medical records, I want to kind of break this down for everyone out there. There's really 4 parts to a medical record, okay? You've got, and when I say medical record, these are the records that a doctor writes after you go to your visit. So not a note that you're going to get for just a medication or prescription or something. Those records, and they do it after every visit, and they keep it in your chart, have 4 main parts. And that includes your history, then your examination, then the diagnosis, and finally the doctor's plan. So breaking those down, first we've got the history, and that's what you give to the doctor as a patient. In other words, you're telling the doctor what part of your body's in pain, what hurts you, when did it start, how did it start, all of those questions about essentially the origin of your injury. Most times that's the most important part of the legal claim because that's, answers the question why, which is always what we're trying to prove in court. The second part is the examination of the doctor, and that is when the doctor writes down what, he or she finds on physical examination. For example, if you've got a shoulder injury, they'll do a range of motion test for your shoulder to figure out, can it go this way, that way, whatnot.
Yep.
And doctors will have different tests for every given body part as part of an exam, and they'll summarize those in the records. And so that's very important. The third section is the diagnosis section, and that's where the doctor states the diagnosis of the patient's condition, right? Like herniated disc or a labrum tear or carpal tunnel syndrome, whatever they suspect it is. And then the fourth and final section of the record is the doctor's plan, or what we'd call the recommendation for care. So this could be a recommendation for medications, a test, an MRI, or even surgery. So as lawyers, we've got to get to know how to read these medical records and understand these, terminologies in the field and understand what doctors use and what it means for our case. And so that's, honestly, probably 75% of what I'm doing on the job is figuring out these medical records, how they relate to my client's case, and how we can use them to prove injuries and damages and things like that.
In your opinion, why are medical records such a big part of building a strong injury case?
The reason it's important is because we have to determine what caused the person's injury. It's very easy to say that maybe an accident on the job or in a car happened, but did that accident or that incident actually cause what we're seeing in these records, right, Evan? So this is where law and medicine don't really align. Doctors usually, if we think about it, are not really concerned with the cause of things. They focus on what the problem is and essentially how to fix it. That's what they do. They're doctors. But as lawyers, we want to know why, what caused it. And that's our main focus. So if the doctor comes out and doesn't say why in the records, then we've got to try to deduce that on our own and ultimately maybe ask the doctor as part of the case to get his opinion for a trial and things. But that why is the most important for us as lawyers. And so medical records are the foundation of every case. A judge or a jury is going to presume that when a person goes to a doctor that they tell them everything and that they tell them accurately. And that's very important. Now, that may not be the case, and it doesn't always happen. I can tell you from, practice and experience. There's doctors and there's hospitals that mess these records up and get them wrong, of course. But in general, medical records are relied on by judges and juries as being credible because they're made in the course of your care when you really need it and when you're not theoretically going to lie about your pain or why you're in pain or why you're going to a doctor, right, Evan? So records can either help or hurt your case. And if your history that you give to the doctor says that you told the doctor you had pain in your back after a car accident the week before, that's going to help you. If the record says that your pain from your back happened lifting, doing something at home like a month ago, then that's not going to help you. So the records and the date of the records are very important to figure out that question of why and what caused it.
So what happens if someone has gaps in treatment or their medical records are, a little incomplete?
So in that scenario, Evan, the short answer is that's going to hurt your case. It's not always fatal, but it definitely makes the case weaker. Again, what we're talking about is a jury or a judge is going to assume that you're in pain and that pain is going to be constant often enough, right? And so that means you've typically got to see a doctor, in my experience, like once a month. Normally you go to a doctor, the doctor is going to say, take some meds, come back and see me in a month. If that doesn't work, do some physical therapy, come back in a month. Maybe if that doesn't work, do an MRI or X-ray or some other kind of testing. So it's always kind of a monthly follow-up. If you've got a gap of more than 3-4 months, that's really not going to look good. And sometimes we can explain these things away. Sometimes you miss a month, you have a vacation, things come up, but that kind of gap starts looking bad. And again, it's just because of the optics of it. And it makes your case harder. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose your case, but certainly it's an uphill battle for us to try to argue that all of that is consistently still related to your case. So typically when I meet with my clients for the very first time, I mention this to them. I tell them, you've got to be consistent with your follow-up. Please go to your scheduled appointments. If you have something that comes up, it's okay, but let me know and try to reschedule with your doc right away.
So can you tell us about a case where, a strong documentation really helped make a difference for a client?
Yeah. So, hey, what's really important is that insurance companies use a database to track everyone's information out there, including your medical treatment and stuff. Okay. It's called an ISO search. That's the name of the database they use. And so and many people don't realize that out there. If you've had a prior accident or injury, there's databases that they get stored in and they share this information. It's the defense industry, right? So I've had many cases. In fact, I just had one the other day in my office where a defense attorney called me. My client injured her shoulder as she was trying to catch a really heavy cart that was stacked full of a bunch of things, and it started tipping over, and she tried to grab it so that it didn't fall over, and she kind of wrenched her shoulder. And we had this on camera, okay? But the attorney calls me and says, hey, my client found through an ISO search that your client had a motor vehicle accident 2 months before and also had an injury to the same arm. And so my client's denying the case. So in that scenario, I had to talk to my client. She ended up getting records from her MyChart, where a lot of folks can go to get your medical treatment documents nowadays, and pull up the actual record of the hospital visit where she went for that car accident. And it showed that she had some pain in her elbow and her hand, but not her shoulder, right? So we've got a big fight now. The insurance company is still trying to say that you injured that arm 2 months ago and it didn't happen on the job, even though we're trying to say, it's the shoulder, not that part of the arm, but it's going to be a fight. So things like that can happen for sure. I've had a case where the medical records have helped us in a positive way. I represented a work comp guy who was a security guard. He was climbing straight up a ladder. It was like a 3-foot ladder that had the kind of wire gauges around it so that you can't fall, because he's going up to a rooftop. And of course, as he's going up, he slips when he's almost to the top, and he falls all the way down, bangs around through this thing as he goes down, hits the ground, bounces off, hits a railing, bounces off that, hits his head on a door, right? I mean, just pinball. So the guy, he was unconscious for a while. Eventually he gets up and is able to walk over to his employer and say, this just happened. My head's killing me. My feet are killing me. That's what he was feeling mainly at the time. Got a ride from, family member, went to the hospital, and documented that. And then over the next day or two, stayed home. They obviously kept him off work because he's in a lot of pain, but pain everywhere else started coming up too. So he goes to the hospital another day or two later, and he's having pain in his knee. He's having pain in his back, his shoulder. And so he documents all of that in the hospital record only another day or two later, 3 days after the accident, right? And from that point on, consistently throughout his whole medical course of care for the next 4 years, this guy's treating for all those body parts, not only his head and his feet, but his knee, his shoulder, his back, all of that. The insurance company fought that case just because the only thing he told his manager initially was, my head and my feet hurt, right? And they fought it all the way, and we went to trial, and we had to prove it all. We won at trial because his records were consistent throughout the whole time, and the judge believed that, just because he didn't say that to him at the moment didn't mean it didn't happen, right? A lot of times injuries can come up a day or two later. It happens all the time.
That's good stuff, Jason. It's good insight. We're out of time, unfortunately, but it's been really great.
You bet, Evan.
That wraps up this episode of The Briefcase and the Beat with Jason Marker. If you'd like to learn more about Jason and the work his team does for injured workers across the state of Illinois, visit marker-law.com. They always offer a free consultation, and you can call them at 331-INJURED. Thanks for listening, and be sure to leave a review, and join us next time for more conversations connecting music, real stories, and legal issues that impact everyday people. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.